Hi, this is Gabriela, and I want to share how I planned my flip lessons. There are two questions I wonder before planning: what and how I will plan. As an ESL teacher, I find the explanations, the grammar content, time consuming. Also, my students are not engaged at all in the lessons, and I find myself explaining the same topic more than once. So when I started flipping, I decided to start flip grammar content. Then I set the aims of the plan, what I want my students to learn, and why I want to teach them that content, what the purpose is. Then I set the objectives, what my students will learn in this lesson. And after that, I think about the activities I will include in the lesson. The activities should definitely meet my students' needs, should follow Bloom's taxonomy by scaffolding their learning towards higher levels of thinking, should promote active learning. The activities should be meaningful and purposeful, and of course, my plan should foster my learners' autonomy and critical thinking. Bearing this in mind, I start sketching my plan. This is an example of my first flip class. As I told you before, I started flipping grammar content. On that occasion, the topic was the uses of gerunds and infinitives. The first thing I did was to decide the out-of-class task. It had to be a video which would cover the objectives I had planned. At the beginning of my flipping experience, I didn't feel confident at creating and making my own videos, so I searched on YouTube and I found plenty of videos ready to be used. So when I found the video will serve for my teaching purpose, I curated it by embedding questions using a website called H5P. And in that way, I will help my students check their understanding about the grammar rules in the video. When I was happy with the out-of-class task, I concentrated on the design of the in-class tasks. But first, I thought about the number of students would work in each station, and I set the time limit in each activity. In station number 1, I planned a Kahoot game in order to make my students remember what they have watched in the video. Also, it was a hook to engage my students in the lesson, and moreover, it provided me with the information about who had watched the video and who had understood the rules, the grammar rules in the video. Then I planned in station 2 a board game, a snakes and ladder board game, with information again from the video. In station number 3, my students found a grammar practice worksheet, and of course I made sure that all my students had one copy. In station number 4, I created some cards with situations. In that stations, my students had to rephrase the situation using a verb pattern or a gerund or an infinitive. And in the situation number 5, relying on my students' knowledge of some tech tools, I wanted them to create an infographic with the information they had learned about the uses of gerunds and infinitives. And after that, I asked them to upload it in a Padlet wall to receive my feedback or any comment or suggestions from their partners. After the class, which worked pretty well, I assessed my plan. I assessed the activities, whether they had been meaningful, boring, interesting for my students. I also evaluated my students' work, if they all had participated in the activities, if they had understood, if they had learned some content, and I evaluated my role too. If I had been able to provide feedback or suggestions or help to my students during the lesson. The information I got from the assessment was very useful because I realized that I had to make some adjustments and changes in my plan. For example, one of the changes I made was to switch the station 2 and station 3. After the Kahoot game, my students would find a grammar practice worksheet and then they will play again. This is the board game Snake and Ladders I used in the station number 2. I had downloaded the template from internet and I completed the game with the information my students found in the video. These are some of the situations cards I made. The students had to use the verb between brackets and used the verb to rephrase the situations they had in the card. And these are two examples of the infographics my students created with the information they had learned. And finally, I would like to tell you what you should know to start flipping your classes. These tips helped me a lot. First, start small, plan chunks of content. Then play safe, at least till you feel confident, for example at making your own videos. Then inform your students how they will work, what you expect from them and why you will flip. If you work with very young children, it would be advisable to inform their parents too. Set the time limit in each activity. I admit I am still struggling with it. And finally, ask for feedback not only from your students but also from your colleagues. Well, that's all. Hope you find this video helpful and push you to start planning your flipped classes. Bye bye.